Welcome, my dear students of class 8A and 8B, to my history and civics class. In today's class, I am going to introduce the previous lesson, the Industrial Revolution and imperialism. The point, as I mentioned here, first point, inventions. Second, creation of capital. Third, availability of natural resources. Fourth, introduction of factory system. And point number 5, science in industry. These are the points mentioned. Please pay attention to it so as to make your doubts clear during online class. And if you have any doubt, any confusion, please ask me question in my live class. Now, the topic I am going to discuss: Industrial Revolution and imperialism. First point, inventions. What are inventions? You know, during industrial era, a number of machines were invented by a number of scientists. The scientists who were born there, they did not have any will. Basically, they were from different countries of Europe. Since the Industrial Revolution took place first in England, many of the scientists were offered huge amount of money by the British government. So, scientists of different countries of Europe, they migrated their settlements from their own place to England. They wanted to establish themselves steadily in the society, since where they were living, the miserable condition, the financial instability of those countries forced them to lead a very miserable life. In spite of having qualities, they could not establish themselves in the field of science and scientific technology and development. It was due to an effort of British government. They all were invited to England. As a result, a number of distinguished, educated people who had deep knowledge in science and scientific explanations, they all left their motherlands for England and started living there. As a result of it, a number of new machines they started inventing. New machines opened the door for all classes, for industrialists, for rich people, money lenders, people who had huge money but could not spend it. Now they came forward in order to invest their money, to make it double. As soon as different machines were invented by the scientists, they all started establishing a number of factories and industries in England. Now, what was needed most? The raw materials. England started establishing a number of colonies throughout Far East. England utilized its financial stability because during the era of industrial revolution, the other European countries were not as prominent, as powerful financially as they could establish themselves. But it was England. Why? Because financially, not only financially England was good, but politically was. Why? Because the political stability of England gave her a strong foothold in acquiring political, financial and social influence throughout Far East, throughout Asia, Europe and Africa. The wave of growth and development which was started from England itself. It reached far and wide. As a result of it, so many countries of Europe, they followed the footsteps of England. Next point, creation of capital. Next point, my dear students, look at it. Second point, creation of capital. Creation of capital. What is about it? A number of money lenders, they came forward in order to invest their money. The money which was left uninvested. Now they realized its importance. They decided to invest money to make themselves more and more rich. Naturally, in the field of industrial growth and development, there came a rapid progress only because of their investment. They not only invested their money in England, but in other parts of Europe where the British government had established their colonies. For example, our country, India. The British established their colony in India in order to utilize the natural resources of our country, in order to meet the growing demands of their factories and industries in England, in order to utilize the cheap labors of our country, because our country was a country financially stable during the time when the British came to India to trade with us. But in course of time, the British realized that the kings of India were rich, prosperous, wealthy, but they did not have courage. So what was needed most was their will, their determination, so that in future they might become the ruler of India. As a result of it, the British started interfering the internal political affairs of our country's kings, regional kingdoms, and in course of time they became the ruler of our country. You know the reason? After the Battle of Plassey in the year 1757. Anyway, this is not my point to be discussed. The point is, how had the British established their colony in India, and what was the reason behind it? The reason behind it was to make their country benefited. Because the country, England, was the first in the world to have witnessed the Industrial Revolution. It was the first country throughout the whole world witnessed the Industrial Revolution. That's why it required cheap labors, it required raw materials in order to meet the growing demands of their factories and industries. So they utilized Indian natural resources, raw materials, supplied it to their country, and afterwards the cheap labors of our country, and as a result of it, the money lenders who invested their money, they all became industrialists. Earlier they were money lenders. Their main aim, their main profession was to give money at high interest to the needy people. But now these money lenders became industrialists. How? By establishing a number of factories and industries, by utilizing its monetary power, financial stability. As a result, India and Indian wealth, they started draining to their own country, England. They started draining Indian wealth, and at the cost of India, they all became rich, prosperous, and wealthy. Next point, availability of natural resources. availability of natural resources. The natural resources were not available in different parts of the world, but to some extent, natural resources were available in our country, India, in China, and in other parts of Asia, Europe, and Africa. In order to get them benefited with these natural resources, England decided to utilize its financial and political power. As a result, England established so many colonies throughout Far East. It helped England to be benefited with the natural resources of such countries where she had no political, financial control. But ultimately, by establishing her colonies there, England was benefited with these natural resources. These natural resources were important to them because England wanted to supply it to their own countries, industries and factories. Ultimately, more and more factories and industries were established by the industrialists, and supplying of the natural resources helped them, encouraged them, and that wave of inspiration reached far and wide. And next point, introduction of factory system. Introduction of factory system. You know, earlier people produced goods manually. During the period when there was no machines, no machine was invented by any scientists. People had to give manual labor in order to produce various types of goods we generally use. As a result, the prices of these goods were very much excessive. The excessive amount of price did not have the excess amount of price of these produced items did not allow common people to purchase it. The common people could not purchase it, could not purchase these products. Why? Because the excessive amount of prices. But as soon as factories and industries were established throughout not only England but throughout the whole world, and machines started working in place of manual work of the common people, the machine-made goods produced from factories and industries flooded the whole markets of Far East. So it occupied the large market of India also. Machine-made goods were accepted cordially by the people of different countries of Far East. Why? Because of its low price. Machine-made goods were not only superior in qualities, but also very, very low in prices. It was under the capabilities of the common people to purchase such kind of goods. By purchasing these goods, they got themselves benefited, and instead of purchasing handmade goods from the artisans, they started purchasing machine-made goods in order to save their money, in order to stress on its qualities, because quality also was very superior. This gave a birth of the factory system. The factory system encouraged the money lenders, they started establishing it. But what was the drawback of what was its drawback? People who completely depended on their handicraft industries, now they all became jobless people. Why? Because of the introduction of factory system. Machines started working in place of handicraft industries. Naturally, artisan, craftsmen, they all became jobless people. And large-scale industries took its places, flooded the whole markets of Far East, which also opened a new door to different countries of Europe, science in industry. Scientists thought, in consultation with other people and moneylenders, industrialists, how productive rates should be increased. The moneylenders, the industrialists needed more and more productive rates. They proposed that productive rates of different goods could be increased only when they would allow factory workers, apprentices, laborers to work whole night as overtime duty. Otherwise, it was not possible. So the idea of providing night shift duty encouraged a group of people who required money, extra amount of money. They didn't care for their health, but they needed extra amount of money they wanted to earn. Ultimately, it gave a birth of a group or a class of people where women also were forced to join as laborers, where children below the age of 10, below the age of even 7, 8, they also were allowed to work in factories and industries. So the child labor, which was restricted in different cities of England, for earning better money, for ensuring better income, for producing more and more goods. Now they decided to allow that system and made it legalized. But that wave of production, large in quantities, bulk in quantities, encouraged other countries of Europe. In course of time, they started following the pathways of England. Up to this, my dear students, if you have any confusion, any doubt regarding today's teaching, you let me know. I shall help you as far as possible to get your doubts cleared during my live classes. Thank you. Thank you so much.